welcome each and every one of the participants for having taken the time out in the morning hours. Of course, pandemic may be the excuse that we don't have other activities to be done, but to take away our mind and thoughts from the existing tension, I believe that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to interact, exchange ideas, and get ourselves acquainted with a specific field of law. This time it is cyber law with special emphasis on Information Technology Act. I would like to go ahead with the presentation, not with the hyper technicalities, but as if seeing a feel-good movie. And of course, with a message to take home at the end of it that you will have to learn the law. Otherwise, it will be difficult to survive in this world. So before I start, and as I said, I'm again expressing my thanks to the Mangalam Management Studies headed by, of course, Associate Professor C.B. James for giving the opportunity, and also to the Mangalam College of Engineering, all the students and all the invited guests. Welcome. I'll just start off with putting one question to you. Can there be illegal, immoral, or unenforceable contracts? A simple question. Maybe right, maybe wrong, you can say anything, but please answer in the chat column whether you believe. Yes means there can be illegal, immoral, and unenforceable contracts. Of course, whether it can be, you'll have to go to a court of law is all something different. Or you can say that there cannot be illegal, immoral, or unenforceable contracts. Please do put your answers in the chat column. And what you find in the chat column is the YouTube link wherein this session also will be uploaded. So you can note that, you can subscribe to that so that you will get all the uploads that is being there. Please. Yeah, couple of answers have come. Yes, there is. No, yes, yes. Wonderful. Let's go ahead. I hope you understood the question. Illegal, immoral, unenforceable contracts, can there be? I'm not asking whether it can be implemented or it can be enforced through a court of law. You will get any relief under that. But can you create an illegal, immoral, or unenforceable? Why this question assumes importance is because I am trying to explain or introduce you to the Information Technology Act basing on the principles of contract. It will be much more easier. Otherwise, I'll have to take you section-wise, chapter-wise, etc., which would be boring that in a morning session. I don't want to destroy the rest of your day. So I thought we'll go like this. Yes, we have yes, 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 no, no, couple of no's, etc. We'll come to that later. Now, just keep that in mind. Number two is that somebody posts something bad about the college. It's not you, some outsider. You only put a like, the icon underneath that. Have you committed any illegal or improper act? Because you are not the creator. You are not done that. So can you be held liable in any manner? Question number one. Question number two, if you comment that absolutely correct, what will be the consequence? Or the third is, if you share it to your friends without making any comment, because it's not your creation, why should there be a problem? I would like to have a couple of answers coming up saying that yes means I'll be liable and responsible for putting the icon. Yes, one will mean that sharing created a problem. Yes, 3 means that comment created a problem. So yes, S1, S2, please put S1, S2, S3. I hope you understood the question. Something obnoxious, something not proper, something defamatory is posted by somebody. You just put a like icon. In our common parlance, we say that we like it too. And or you just shared it. You didn't make any comment on that. And finally, you did make a comment saying that correct. It's high time somebody spoke up against establishment, or forget about establishment. Think about it is against me. And you feel that you put a like, yes to 2 and 3, very good. Yes, liable, wonderful. So these things, if you have a clear idea during the session, I would believe that my today's exercise has become fruitful. So friends, I'll just keep this in mind. We'll answer it during the course of the session and let us proceed. I'll just, to keep you entertained, we'll go by a PowerPoint presentation. Is it visible? I hope it's visible, right? Sibi sir, I'll unmute you.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So the topic that has been given to me is cyber law and overview of the Information Technology Act. Okay. Whenever you are confronted with an issue, you will always say that your fundamental rights have been infringed. Fundamental rights have been infringed. So, couple of pages thereafter, there is something known as fundamental duties. We have never read it or we have never taken any trouble to do that. Of which one of the fundamental duties I am much concerned or I would like to present before you is Article 51 AJ. It says that it is the fundamental duty of every responsible citizen to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievements. So my young friends, I implore all of you, without blaming or pointing fingers at others or waiting for a messiah to come and resolve all the issues, the fundamental duties enshrined in the constitution makes it mandatory that each and every one of us has got a fundamental duty to strive towards excellence in whatever activities you are. You might be the sweeper, you might be the collector of the district, or you might be the prime minister or president for that matter. Every Indian citizen, whatever avocation, whatever walks of life you are in, you are expected to strive towards excellence. Once each and every one of us get ourselves well equipped and try to reach our true potential, the country will definitely go ahead and reach its pinnacle. So I would believe that the Mangalam Management of Studies would have kept this fundamental duty in mind while arranging this session, because this is an empowering session wherein there will be exchange of ideas, and by having exchange of ideas, we can empower ourselves. Now, there is a saying in surgery which says that the eye does not see what the mind does not know. What does it mean? If a human body is cut open for surgical purposes, and if I and many of you go and see, you would see a lot of blood and things like that, and you might get nauseated, or you may not be able to understand. But for a seasoned surgeon, it takes only a couple of minutes or seconds to distinguish between an organ and a tumor. We both have seen the same thing. How is it possible that he can see or understand whereas I cannot, or many among you cannot? It is because he is equipped, he has the knowledge, he is able to distinguish between a tumor and a organ. This is what exactly is required. Your perception or reaction to anything that happens in this world will depend upon the knowledge, the information you have. That is why we have different tools, right? Like Right to Information Act and other tools by which you can collect the requisite data, equip yourself, and then respond. Knee-jerk reaction on issues, I'm especially on this aspect because I'm sure that I'm addressing a group of youngsters who are doing MBA, who will be the social engineers of tomorrow. Each one of you matters. Each one of you will be a decision maker in your establishment and in turn to the country as well. So unless and until you equip yourself with the requisite knowledge, the requisite tools, it will be a waste of a generation lost it will be. And we have a country wherein it is ruled by the rule of law. It means that it is not the individuals, but a set law or the legal regime or the rules and with the constitution on the top, which rules the country. That is why we say ignorance of law is no excuse. Then does that mean that each and every one of us should know all the sections and subsections, all the provisions of law? No. For which I would say learning law, and for that matter, learning anything, even your management principles, I'm sure that Sibizar also would agree with me, is something I would nomenclature it as grandma's wisdom, or to make it gender neutral, a cook's wisdom. All of us cook rice. How do you know the rice is ripe to be served? You take one grain, crush it between your fingers, and if it crushes smoothly or rather very softly, you know that that grain is ready to be served. Do you do the same exercise with all other grains? You don't. By this, you know that the pot is ready. It's a very profound act. Where to look, what to look, and what inference to draw from the knowledge you have gained. Learning anything, especially law or management principles, is like this wisdom. You should know where to look, what to look, and what inference to draw from the materials you have collected. I believe today's session would be more or less like that. Instead of pumping in your brain all this, I mean, it's a very small book with around 90 sections and around 2 schedules. It underwent 2 amendments. I'm not going to take you through these different things. And especially yesterday, we have a complication as well, because regarding section 65B, I don't know how many of you know about section 65B of the Evidence Act. Section 65B of the Evidence Act says that for an electronic record to be admissible in a court of law, it should be accompanied by a section 65B certificate. There was dispute. This section came 20 years ago. Last 20 years, the courts were debating. And finally, it was referred to a 3-judge bench, Supreme Court 3-judge bench. And yesterday, the decision was rendered, which many of us feel a bit aggrieved, because it does not touch upon the nuances. Some may would say that that is the law of the land, and some may even blame the legislature, because it is the legislature which makes the law. So let us get one more thing straight. The country stands on 3 legs: executive, legislature, and the judiciary. All the 3 have their own, what I can say, duties and responsibilities. The legislature legislates, the executive has to execute things, and finally the judiciary, it has to. So I was on the point that, where was I? Right. Today's session would be much of an overview. It is just like whether to know whether the rice is ripe or cooked to be served. So all of you know that life was much easier before technology came in. Apple and BlackBerry were just fruits, and we had more social interactions and times together. But we cannot run away from you cannot always remain in the cave. We cannot be the caveman. We have to advance in life. This is a reality. The new technologies are all pervasive. It has just all the facets, all our what you call relationships, interactions, everything. So there is no escape from that. It is just, and also there are new technologies and ways of duping. This sort of social engineering has come, wherein some messages like this will come. If you answer to that, there is an issue. Okay, Raj, I'm thankful to you. You can disable the annotation lecture in your Zoom settings to prevent. I'll do it next time. For the time being, let us have self-restraint, Raj. Thank you very much. Yeah. These sort of messages do come. If you respond to that, there is a problem. So, crime has not changed. What you find in the literary masterpiece of Machiavelli, that is Indian Penal Code, what is defined therein, that exactly is being done. If you were doing murder earlier, now you are doing cyber murder. If you are doing cheating earlier, you are doing cheating using this new platform. All those offenses, all those fraud things, all those things which are not desirable in a society, at least to the majority, are being perpetrated by those who are doing it using the technology. So you cannot blame the technology. It is just that it is being done indiscriminately. Now, it is even more important because recently the Supreme Court has now held that service of notices, summons, documents, etc., through, especially in view of the pandemic condition. Because of this changing scenario, it has now been held that all these things can be done using web-enabled technology. So, unless and until, all this I highlighted for the purpose that there is no way you can run away. You cannot just like an ostrich, put your hand in the sand and wish away all these things. No, these are things which has come to stay. It is high time we all knew what the legal regime, especially when we live in a country where there is rule of law. So I'll just put a couple of questions again, not for answers really, but still to have a discussion or to put your thinking pattern ahead. We all have knives, blades, needle, maybe I don't know about axe, etc. But usually in my home, we have access, spades, everything, because it's an old style one. But new houses may not have it, but at least we have all these things. Can you not hurt others with this? Could you not commit a murder? Could you not commit an offense doing all this? So if that things can be used for as tools to commit murder, etc., or crimes, do you abolish them? Do you ban them altogether? You don't. What you do is that awareness, avoidance, and management. Somebody was telling that I have not taken internet connection to my home. Why? There are impressionable age, children of impressionable age, they might get misguided. I asked him, do you have knife, etc. in your home? Yes. Will they not hurt someone else? I have kept it away safely away from them. Likewise, it is not the technology. It is not the new platform which is having the problem. The problem is that we are not attuned to managing it properly. If you are attuned to managing it properly, it is one of the best tool available in the recent past. Why? Because just imagine somebody used to be a bathroom singer, unknown to the oblivious to the entire world, has now become a center stage singer. Somebody whose article would have remained in a small campus, he is now celebrated as an international treatise. Why? It's all because of this new technology. It's all because of this. So I would say that this technology has awesome powers. These awesome powers can be used positively and negatively. And to use it, you should know the legal regime behind it. Today's exercise or today's endeavor in the next, say around the remaining time, whatever I have, would be to introduce you to the subject and let you know that there is a legal regime in place. And if you act properly, if you act within the legally permissible bounds, it is just like saying you got the freedom to move your hand, but till the nose of the other person starts. If you want to have your freedom of speech and expression, if you want to have your freedom of whatever it is subservient to the equal freedom of the other person. You will have to give that the other person also the same leeway. He should have the same freedom. You just cannot arrogate to yourself the entire freedom stuff and say that you're all subservient to me. No. If that other person has got a freedom, the same freedom I also have. Respect each other's freedom and there will be no issues at all. Now, it is just like saying, if you have got fences, you got water around, fences may not be sufficient. You will have to learn to swim. It is to be safe around water. We teach kids to swim or we have to teach ourselves to swim. The endeavor should be to learn and not to say that, no. Somebody was saying that I don't have a smartphone or I don't use all these things as if something great. But I believe that to be in this or to survive in this environment, you'll have to keep on running to stay where you are. And for that matter, unless and until you are tech savvy, I don't say that you should be a master. Like those things that was appearing, I was unable to, somebody was telling that there is annotations could be there. Maybe I learned it by trial and error. Does that mean that I should shy away from this technology? Then I will not be in a Zoom platform. I will not be using all these PowerPoint presentations. I'll be the old, I'll pedal all the way to Mangalam College to take the class to you. So the issue is how to get yourself acclimatized to the. So today's subject is, what was the legal scenario prior to the Information Technology Act? The objects and reasons of Information Technology Act. That is important because everybody nowadays hears about Information Technology Act only in one manner. Such and such person has been punished under provisions of or arrested under the provisions of Information Technology Act. So it has more or less become as synonymous with a punitive statute. Whereas the very purpose, the intention of having this act was twofold: to promote e-governance and to promote e-commerce. That was the sole intention. But as we all know, our inherent weaknesses and the way in which we behave, especially by those characters who are putting that lines on that, how many times you say is of no consequence. It is just like that. So then the salient features, I'll address the salient features of the act, and with the concluding remarks, I would like to caution all those guests who are here today, other than the students, that this is not a hyper-technical session. Like the usual littles, the legal empowerment classes we have daily in the afternoon. Today we are on the 83rd session, every day without a break, wherein we go deep into subjects, technicalities of subjects. Here it is only an overview of the subject and to kindle interest in the student community, the generation next, to be aware and not to frighten them with technicalities. That is simply today's equation. And also to make them a bit aware, like the question I put earlier, like, share, etc. What is the consequence? Pitfalls in cyberspace, the awareness, avoidance, and management. And to put it the quintessence of the presentation would be to demystify cyber law. We have not much practitioners in this field. Why? Because everybody feels that, oh my God, this is something which I will never understand. How do I know without encryption the process? What is a public key infrastructure program? What is a private key? Not necessary. You need not lay eggs to understand whether the egg is good or bad. Very simple as that. Now, let us see. Law and technology has always had reciprocal influences. On the one hand, law is used for the regulation of technology. On the other hand, law employs technologies to pursue its own goals. We'll just go by the headings because the other things you can just read along with me. Technology may change the contents of protected legal interests. Just read the other thing, you can read on your own. B, the emergence of new technologies can transform well-established scenarios. We have examples of DNA fingerprinting and things coming wherein paternity legitimacy dispute could be resolved because biological father can be found out with exactitude. Law can employ new technologies to pursue goals which were pursued by other technologies in the past. The rules arising from technologies are shaped by the features characterizing such technologies. These are all issues which crop up when new technology comes. Technologies create new commodities, and the change in technologies influences also source and the structure of the rules. Technology sometimes may itself become the rule because it imposes the operational rules. We have different data protection and things that we'll touch upon later. The norms which regulate the employment of new technologies for establishing documentary evidence are characterized by high technological contents as they are expressed by individuals who have specific competencies. Now, what all I said earlier can be put in this very simple. An increasing amount of human activity is now taking place within cyberspace. However, the near instantaneous nature of internet transactions and the transborder topology of the internet cut across traditional patterns of legal regulation. Cyberspace is nothing but regular or our actual activities being carried on in another platform. The same individuals, there is no change, the same activities, the same legal scenario, and all the restrictions and things that would augment doing of activities can also be there in the other platform. That is to keep you from sleeping, that's all. Cyberspace in the end, a place populated by humans or more appropriately by human minds. It is our intellects that reside and meet one another. So there is nothing special or something that nothing changes. Everything is the same individual, same thing, but the platform changes. Platform of interaction alone changes. All problems of the real world carried over to the virtual world. This is the first leg of my presentation wherein I would say that even before the introduction of the Information Technology Act, the existing scenario or the existing legal regime or the justice dispensation machinery was sufficient and adequately, I would say, equipped to deal with the situation. Bill Gates has said that digital nervous system, cyber world is a digital nervous system. As you all know, if you have a nerve issue, you're done for. It is a virtual world. It is transnational. For the first time, we have an act which says that an offense committed by anybody, anywhere in the world, implementation aspect, etc., we'll see. But we have an act which says that, but another provision in the same act says that the effect should be in the country. If something is done elsewhere and the net effect or the result is affecting anything in the country, that can be taken cognizance of the domestic courts or domestic legal system. Then what is this cyber? The term cyber has been used, cyber. Have you ever thought of that? Cyber is a prefix used to describe a person or a thing or idea as part of the computer and information age. Taken from that you can just read. That's information for you. I don't want to waste my energy on that. Okay, good. I don't know whether Albert Einstein ever said this, but when I saw this, I could not resist myself from sharing it with you. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. That's what he said. Oh, that is what he's reported to have said. I don't know whether he actually said it or I not cross-checked that. I'm sorry about that. Now, we'll have the first principles first. What is the legal mandate? Just, I asked you a question earlier. Can there be illegal, immoral, or unenforceable contracts? Let us first see. I'm sure that all of you are MBA students or have some legal background. How is a contract formed? If you can just post it in the chat column, your knowledge regarding how a contract is formed. Let us, it won't be shared by to anybody, or it is not gauging your knowledge or information. It is just having a dialogue with you. Please don't feel that I'm trying to impose my wisdom or verify whether you are having the sufficient knowledge, etc. Absolutely not. It is only to make it interesting. Just post it. Anyone? According to you, how is it that a contract is formed? Correct? Anything else? Let us start from the beginning. Where does it all start? Okay, let us to be very very what do you call it, comfortable in relating. We'll take marriage as a contract. Where does it all begin? No, consideration all comes in, but where does it all begin? See, you like a female or a male, which side of the gender you are on, and then first what you'll have to do? You'll have to. No, promise also comes later. Before that, mutual agreement also comes in. Offer, that is, you'll have to make an offer in terms of marriage things. It is not as a proposal, right? Thank you. Understanding, of course, acceptance, of course, wonderful. All those posts I like. So, what is it that you first do is to make a proposal, to make an offer. Once that offer is made, if the other party is interested in the offer or the proposal made, what do? Yes, acceptance. Once accepted, once an offer is accepted, it becomes what? Not an agreement. Agreement is far away. It becomes a bare promise. It's only a promise to marry, a promise to do something. An offer accepted becomes a promise. Now, a promise, if it is supported by consideration, that it is for such and such amount, or under the contract act, the consideration can be to do or to desist from doing something, some quid pro quo. So, a offer, when accepted, becomes a promise. A promise supported by consideration is an agreement, right? Now, we have reached agreement. How do we elevate this agreement into a contract? Like somebody has posted in the first instance itself. All agreements which are enforceable under law alone are contracts. See? How can there be an illegal, immoral, or unenforceable contract? There can only be illegal, immoral, and unenforceable agreements, never contracts, because the contract presupposes legal enforceability. All contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contracts. Kararum, Udambadiyum thammilulla vyathyasam. So, first you will have to understand that there cannot be, why I cited this example is because not to let you know what is an illegal, immoral contract or something enforceable under law is a contract. No. In the entire chain of formation of a contract, did you see paper anywhere? You did not. This brings us to the basic concept of what is the legal mandate to have a safe transacting environment. It is three things. Number one is authentication. Number two is report integrity. Number three is non-repudiation. If these three attributes can be guaranteed, the legal system of any civilized country would accept that as something that is legal and permissible. If these things are assured in an ecosystem, that is sufficient. That is where I said in the formation of a contract, these are the things. And now what determines security also will have to be seen. Once you get out of the house, what do? You lock the door. So your security is through that key. The mobile, you don't want someone else to open, so you have codes, passwords, etc. That is the way you secure it. And sometimes check or something, you'll have to see that it can only be my signature, dynamics of my handwriting. So in this universe, there are only three things which secures anything, whether it is actual or virtual for that matter. I'll put it in this way. What I am, what I have, and what I know. These three things can be like this. Just see. What I am is the biometrics, the fingerprint, iris scan, face recognition, dynamics of handwriting, sound recognition softwares are there. Unless and until your sound is there, it will not open. So that is what I am. What I have is the ordinary keys or the dongle, the smart card, whatever it is. That's a physical thing with which you can do that. What I know is the private key as far as digital signature is concerned, or the password, etc. So different combination of these three determines a security of any environment. Why I'm on all these things is because I'm trying to justify that actual or virtual, the attributes are the same. There is no distinction. We'll just see. I call it as pain. See, privacy in the actual plane, whatever it is, in the virtual plane, it's by data encryption. Authenticity is by digital signatures, certificates, and certifying agencies. Integrity is by hash algorithms, that asymmetric crypto system. Message digest. Non-repudiation is by digital signatures. I'll elaborately put it in another manner, a direct comparison. Just see, this is the actual world on one part, and this is the virtual part. Envelopes, we have encryption. Seals and stamps, we got passwords. Barcodes, digital watermarks. Signature, we got digital signatures. Identification cards, we got smart cards. Notary public, we got the certifying authority. And witness attestation, not necessary in virtual world, because whatever digital signature, etc. you have is even otherwise linked to you. The use of it, the presumption is that it is you and no one else. See, the present legal system, the issue was that it is paper centric. Signature, attestation, registration, etc. is necessary, and opinion evidence was also very, very difficult. But all that has changed. All the stakeholders in the justice dispensation machinery have now been educated, and they are completely attuned to the present scenario. I'll also give you, so you would you have to know that how the process works before I come to the next slide. We have something known as a pregnancy test kit available in the market. It says that that's a small card test. It is known as couple of urines at one, and if one band appears, that person whose urine has been put is pregnant. Two band appears, I think, non-pregnant, and that's the way. If my urine also produces the single band, will the doctor tell me, okay, Shyam, congratulations, you are going to have a boy or a girl, something like that? No. Why? Because the doctor comes to a conclusion not merely on the technology, but because of the philosophy or the science behind it. The medical science says that pregnant women will have a heightened plateau of a particular hormone, HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophin hormone. So what about me? The same medical science says that if you have a malignant tumor inside, males also can produce that. So it is the forensic skill of the doctor, his clinical evaluation, which finally decides. It is the same manner in which courts decide cases. This is only for your understanding so that it will be easy. So now you know there cannot be an illegal, immoral, and unenforceable contract. There can only be illegal, immoral, and unenforceable agreements. And this, I already told you, offer acceptance becomes a promise. Promise supported by consideration, it becomes an agreement. And all agreements which are enforceable under law, and they alone, are contracts. Now, how e-contracts are formed? See, now you know how the formation of actual contracts. Now let us see the common three ways of forming e-contracts. One is browse wrap, the other is shrink wrap, and the other is known as click wrap. You would have done it more than 100 times, but without realizing the legal nuances attached to it. Browse wrap is that when you browse, there will be I agree column. or there will be things by which you say by entering into that itself, the contracting party's mere use of the website itself is an acceptance. So their offer, or they say these are 101 conditions. The very fact that you are browsing that shows that you are concurred to that. So a valid contract is formed or an agreement is formed. Shrink wrap is contracting party read the terms and conditions after opening the box in which product is passed. It is just like having something packed in a polythene cover or something wherein the conditions are here. To access the thing inside, you will have to break it open. The very act of you breaking it open presupposes that you have read this. And finally, the commonly used is I accept tab, which you do automatically. It is just like a spinal reflex. Nobody thinks much about it, but rest assured and be forewarned that you are entering into valid agreements by signing all this or doing these acts. So once you have a basic concept of what exactly is the legal regime of the country, don't confuse yourself with the technology. Technology has got nothing to do with that. If you are having the common sense to understand it in that manner, then there will be no issue. Now, two more things before I come to the second stage. That is, you should know the distinction between a civil and criminal proceedings. In civil proceedings, I have a story, you have a story. Of the two stories, which is more probable will be accepted as, and it becomes the judgment. It is known as preponderance of probability. Among the two, which is more probable, going by the common evidence adduced and the records available in the matter. And in expert evidence, etc., you need not confuse it with that. That is different ways in which you can establish, each party can establish their case. There is no issue regarding that. Whereas in criminal cases, it is beyond reasonable doubt. Yes. Wherein a party gets the benefit of doubt. The basic principle being nobody shall be punished without the offense being proved to the hilt, because you are depriving somebody of his life or personal liberty. That is the reason. Now, evidence, what is, you should understand. It can be substantial procedure. I am not on that. The court is not concerned with the concept of truth, but only evidence. If there is evidence, it is presumed to, that is a definition of prove and proved in the Evidence Act, which you need not go to the intricacies. Now, if you thought that it is the technology which created all the problems, just imagine the time when the post office came. Till then, agreements were being entered into by parties face to face. Now you say that because of the technology, it's created a lot of confusion. But at that point of time, when postal department was established and post came into vogue, we had problems. Because if myself and Sebi sir is sitting here together and signing this contract, there is no problem. Where is the contract form? Sitting in my office, we are face to face. We sign it, everything. There is absolutely no problem. Offer is made here, he has accepted it, and acceptance I should hear. Then only the acceptance becomes final. The offerer should hear the acceptance being signified by the other party, right? Now let us see the earlier problem used. Post and telegram created a lot of legal issues. Time of contract, place of contract, where the cause of action arise, when the contract was finally confirmed. So that is where it was said that once you put your significance or rather your offer in transit, your role is over. But till it reaches the other party, it does not come into effect. For example, time of contract. The time of the finalization of the contract is the time when the letter of acceptance has been posted. Place of contract. The place of contract is the place from where the letter of acceptance has been posted. I'm not on this nuances, but we had issues earlier. Then came telephone. Just imagine, I am selling Gola Copra to somebody sitting here in Cochin to Bombay. Hello, I got such and such quantity of Gola Copra to be, and from APMC market, Thane or Vashi or Navi Mumbai, they would say that, okay, we'll take that. Where does the contract form? These are all issues which confronted earlier. It's not as if just because of the net-enabled technology or internet came into vogue, we had an issue, right? Then that is known as the doctrine of instantaneous communication. In one of the celebrated cases of Bhagwanda's case, that is 1966 Supreme Court 543, where the offeree speaks his acceptance and his words are put in the course of transmission, he is unable to revoke his acceptance. With technological advancement, the device called telephone delivers the message signal instantaneously and within a gap of nanoseconds. the offerer can know the acceptance of the offeree. Thus, it can be said that when the offeree speaks his acceptance, the offerer gets to hear it, and hence the contract is formed at the place offeree speaks of his acceptance. A contract via, then it was known as instantaneous modes of communication, is formed when the offeree accepts the offer and intimates the offerer of his acceptance. The intimation must be by the same external manifestation which law regards as sufficient. So these slides are only to impress upon you that issues were there. It is not as if it has been created now. Now we are used to telegraph, telephone, and post, etc. So we believe that there is no issue. It is just like that. The new technology has come. There will be some acclimatization and teething problems during that infancy stage. Then we also will get used to all the nuances and intricacies of the legal system, what the legal mandate of the country is. Telephone is an instantaneous communication of speech intimating offer and acceptance, rejection and counter offer, intervention of an electrical impulse which results in the instantaneous communication of messages from a distance does not alter the nature of the conversation so as to make it analogous to that of an offer and acceptance through post or by telegraph. Now we have a corresponding section in section 10A in Information Technology Act, validity of contracts formed through electronic means. Where in a contract formation, the communication of proposals, the acceptance of proposals, you need not sign any document. You send an email saying the offer, and reply email, an encrypted reply email comes which says that they have accepted. Supported by consideration. If it is enforceable under law, a contract is formed. Our actual concept of sitting together and signing, etc., is of no consequence. The only essential requirement to validate a e-contract, these essentials are not something that has been newly created. It is there in the old Contract Act itself. Number one, offer and unconditional acceptance. Number two, lawful purpose and consideration. Number three, capacities of parties and free consent. See, so I'll be bold enough to submit that in spite of all this evolution of technology from whatever means, the existing law and the existing way in which we have seen how contractual or other commission of offences, etc., are to be viewed, weighed, adjudicated. There was no issue. I'll give you another example. Being MBA students, I'm sure that you all know about return of checks dishonored. That is known as bouncing of checks. Earlier, before the amendment, there was an issue. Once, and as all of you know, that dishonor of check is not the offence. The offence is that non-payment by the party who issued the check in spite of a demand made to pay it up. Then and then the offence happens. So in this case, what happened was that earlier the notice has to be sent within 15 days, and thereafter 30 days, if it does not pay up, it has to be paid, etc. So the dates were very important. In a case, the gentleman issued the notice through fax. At that time, fax had come into vogue. Nowadays, nobody uses a fax machine, I know. But at that point of time, fax had come and it was used. The magistrate dismissed, it went up to High Court, dismissed, saying that no, you should send it by registered post, acknowledgement due. It went up to the Supreme Court. The bench headed by Justice K.T. Thomas, that is the case is SIL Import USA versus Exim Aid Silk Exporters. Those who are interested can note the citation also, AER 1999, Supreme Court 1609. Wherein the court held statutory interpretation has to be made by giving allowances for any relevant changes that have occurred since the Act's passing in law, social conditions, technology, the meaning of words and other matters. See? So, technological changes have to be read into the provision, and a proactive role is given to the judiciary to interpret it while statutory interpretation is being done. Same thing has happened. Take social change. In Hindu Adoption and Guardianship Act, there is a special provision, I think section 4 or something, wherein the natural guardian of a Hindu minor is the father, and after him, the mother. This after him was always, interpreted as being after the death of the father alone, the mother will become the guardian. But after the gender equality things and United Nations passing resolutions regarding that, we being a signatory, and the change in social conditions wherein our country also awakened to the gender equality thing. This after him, the Supreme Court asked, where is it said that it is after death? It is only after him. Or that could be interpreted as in his absence or if he's incapacitated, etc. Even that is now under challenge, because whether even that interpretation itself, why should the wife stand in queue for the husband to be absent, incapacitated, etc., is before the Constitution bench of our Supreme Court. But I would say that at least at that point of time, the Supreme Court interpreted that particular provision as meaning in a proactive manner, saying that allowances for any relevant changes has to be given. There are other decisions, if you want, you can note, if at all you are interested. Electronically recorded conversation is admissible way back in 1973. Supreme Court further held that the contemporaneous electronic recording of a relevant conversation is a relevant fact, comparable to a photograph. So it is not as if that Information Technology Act, had there been no Information Technology Act in 2000, we would have been at a loss, or we would be completely ill-equipped to deal with the situation. No. We require Information Technology Act. The reasons I shall come to later. But likewise, you can also see 1985 Supreme Court, relying on different judgments of English judgments, it held that it will be wrong to deny to the law of evidence advantages to be gained by new techniques and new devices, provided the accuracy of the recording can be proved. Then another case, new techniques and devices are order of the day. Those such devices are susceptible to tampering. No exhaustive rule could be laid down by which the admission of such evidence may be judged. Standard of proof of its authenticity and accuracy has to be more stringent than other documentary evidence. Thomas O. Bruno, of course, I would say that yesterday's decision rendered by the Supreme Court has held that this to be per curiam. But one line therein I wanted to share with you is that it was a three-judge bench decision yesterday. Another three-judge bench has, while addressing Section 65B, held that this is per curiam. Advancement of information technology and scientific temper must pervade the method of investigation. Electronic evidence was relevant to establish facts. Scientific and electronic evidence can be a great help to an investigating agency. And the legal acceptability depends upon authenticity. The three principles I shared with you earlier. Then uniformity. Of course, there is a possibility of tampering. Just imagine, I say I am Shyam. How do you know I am Shyam? The basic document is my electoral ID, my passport, my PAN card, or whatever it is. There have been occasions we have come across different cases wherein this has been tampered, doctored, manipulated. Did we do away with the entire system? No. Only thing is that there is always, as long as we human beings are in between, any system is as strong as its weakest link. And as far as human beings are concerned, we are the weakest link. So unless and until we also improve ourselves substantially, which I need not be very negative, I'd say that I foresee in the reasonable future. So it is not that legal mandate is not, it should be 100% proof, foolproof. Only thing is that if at all something that is compromised, it should be able to be found out. But the crypto system, or the system that is now being adopted, says that it is computationally infeasible to tamper with it. The only issue is that you should be able to find out if something happens. Simple as that. And you should be able to give a reasonable explanation for the consequence. You should be able to give a scientific, plausible, with empirical evidence, what exactly is the cause or why this consequence has happened. Then the existing legal system will accept it. So I am almost more than halfway through my presentation, and it's only the concluding part which I'll be dealing with later. But my endeavor till now was that it is the existing law. You prefix it with E and put some sort of, give some sort of leeways and be proactive in interpreting it. That was sufficient. Then why the new act would be the question. Need for new cyber law is because we required certain presumptions, we required certain things to be taken care of, which otherwise would have required intricate evidence, and you'll have to labor for unnecessary waste of time and energy of all the stakeholders of this justice dispensation machinery as far as cyber offenses or cyber anything that happens, interactions which happens in the cyber world is concerned. That is why we required a new law. And the new law, as I started off my presentation, is not a penal statute. We have been hearing about Information Technology Act for all the wrong reasons, whereas we forget that nowadays how many of us stand in the queue to book tickets. Let it be fly. Nowadays we are not at all traveling, we are all grounded. That's another story. But when we used to do it, otherwise we used to go to the railway station, queue up, or go to some agent and do it, etc., etc. But Now almost anything and everything. Now how many of us go to purchase things? We have portals which gives you almost from starting from uppu mudal karpuram vare, whatever it is, whatever you want, anything and everything under the sun, wherever it is being manufactured, you can get it by a click of a button. So all this happened because we have a legal regime in place to oversee interactions in cyberplace. That is where the importance of information technology comes in. Let us not belittle or let us not be unaware of the fact that all those things which you are doing right now, we are able to do it is because it is completely covered, governed, and managed by a legal scenario. Just I'll put one more question to you. What is the last thing you do when you step out of the house? I'm not talking about putting putty on your face or looking into the mirror and saying that you're smart and things like that. But the last thing you do usually is lock the door, right? What is so special about locking that door? Any person who is reasonably strong can just by a kick open that door. But in spite of that, locking the door gives you a sense of what you call safety, security, that all your valuables, dear and near ones inside. The very fact that all of us today we are sitting at our own homes, otherwise go to any place or to a college or for that matter or to any seminars and sit for hours on end hearing to the lecture, is because you are assured that when you go back home, everything will be intact. It is not, there is no magic in the door. The magic is in the legal regime of the country, which make it unprofitable, punishable, or visited with penal consequences if somebody trespasses or does some sort of mischief. That is where we have to respect the legal system of the country, because that is what gives us all the freedom. Once you say the constitution gives you, constitution provides, but it has to be made worthwhile, or if it should serve some purpose, it should be able to be enjoyed by us, all the rights, etc. That is where the legal system of the country come into place. Cyber crimes deals with cyber crimes, cyber law deals with cyber crimes, electronic digital signature, intellectual property, data protection, etc. Now, why understanding this is very difficult is because I would say, I mean, at the risk of repetition, of course, that Information Technology Act is the second technology related legislation in India in the last 115 years. The earlier one would have been the Indian Telegraph Act of 1885. Here, the definition is given to computer, etc. has been elaborately discussed and defined. We are the 12th country, 17th October 2000, it came into force, 2 amendments, some other changes otherwise. Now, applying technology and getting desired results is one thing, but appreciating the value of evidence is another. These are the issues which we may have to address while dealing with cyber adjudication or when we deal with this specialized branch of law. But just imagine, if you can visualize, simplify this. I'll ask you, what is ATM stands for? Can anybody post in the chat column? What is the meaning of ATM? Everybody goes to an ATM. What is it? ATM. I took money out of the ATM. I went to ATM, etc., etc. Correct? Correct? Yes. Now, I would request you, what does that do? It does not tell you anything. It does not. Absolutely. It is, I would put, Ramshad, I'd change it as anytime money. You have put it almost rightly, all time money. But I'd say if you are able to understand that ATM as anytime money, that is the way you have to understand anything. Instead of losing sight for the trees for the forest or forest for the trees, if you simplify this and see things in a very simple pattern, then there is always, it's very easy to understand. Anything can be simplified, anything can be put into the basics. And once you understand that, instead of getting yourself lost in the forest, somebody was saying that unless and until you know how to approach, it is just like a doll made of salt jumping into the sea to fathom its depth. Just imagine a doll made of salt jumping into the ocean to find out or to fathom the depth. As and when it goes deeper and deeper, it gets disintegrated or it gets completely absorbed in the water, and you will be nowhere. So if you know how to approach, cyber law refers to the interaction of law with information communication technologies and computer, etc. You can just read that. The body of laws intended to regulate behavior in cyberspace. Like I said earlier, cyberspace is completely populated by human minds or human beings. There is nothing in that other than that. Now, what is the issue is that usually law is made. It is we used to say that law is not the command of the sovereign. It is the expression of the will of the people, and it is consistent with law of reason. It is the quintessence of the common sense of the community. It evolves. It evolves gradually to address the felt need of the society. But here the issue was that it didn't have that what do you call gestation period or that formation period. It was suddenly imposed upon us because of international compulsions as well. That created a lot of problems in the sense like of understanding and assimilating this new law. So I'd say that it's on the lighter vein. You can say the different fluid stages of life, starting from this bottle to this stage. So unless and until you go through that and suddenly you go from one to the other, there is a problem. Law made to address the felt need of the society, technological development and international compulsions in this instant case, UN Commission, UN CITRAL in 1996, India being a signatory has to revise its laws. There are two provisions which I shall deal separately now itself. Article 253 of the Constitution of India says that legislation for giving effect to international agreements. Notwithstanding anything in the foregoing provisions of this chapter, Parliament has power to make any law for the whole or any part. That is why this is one among the few acts which says that this applies to the whole of the country, including Jammu and Kashmir. 253 was invoked. Any other act if you take, except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Here, invoking Article 253, it applies to the whole of the country. This is the paradox. You can just go through that. Okay. Then the resolution adopted in the General Assembly of the UN on a particular date, as seen from the slide, it recommends that all states give favorable consideration to the model law on electronic commerce when they enact or revise their laws in view of the need for uniformity of the law applicable. Why? Because this technology does not know or recognizes state boundaries. It is of universal application. A press of a button here can create I'll just ask you one more question. Can you just put in the chat column? One more time, I'll be bothering you. That is, can you murder a person using internet or web-enabled technology? I'm not talking about taking the CPU and hitting a head of another person. No, I'm asking you, is it at least theoretically possible to murder another person using internet or web-enabled technology? Yes, I got yes, possible, wonderful answers. Can anybody just type in how you intend to murder me sitting there? You would like to, I know that, having taken more than 1 hour of my presentation, through my presentation, it is a natural instinct or a natural impulse that comes in anyone among you or all my audience to somehow or other kill me. Blue whale is one. Okay, I take blue whale. Blue whale is taking what you call your weaknesses, and it is a consistent process. I'm not talking, I need not be involved. Blue whale, the victim should be involved in that. Without me knowing, without me being a participant on that, is there any way you can hurt me? Mentally kill, of course, I do agree. It is cyberbullying or harassing, very many things. But other than that, can you do that? I'll give you one scenario. If is a conspiracy can be done, of course. Again, that's only you're conspiring. You're not killing. I want you to kill. Culpable homicide amounting to murder. I want you to kill me. Terrorism, of course. Then again, what kind of terrorism? How do you kill me? Creating fake news that somebody is dead. Then again, I am alive. That won't. Okay, fine. I'll give you one scenario. Let us see. Just imagine I am very wealthy, I am rich, and I intend to give all my assets to my grandson, one among you. But the thing is that I am healthy and I am not dying. I should die for him to get that money. So what does he do? He's in a hurry because he doesn't have that much money. This fool is not dying. And if it takes another 20 years, then thereafter, if I get the money, all those things I would like to enjoy and do now cannot be done. So I want to do away with him. So what do? This person, I am hospitalized. Just imagine that I am going for an ordinary checkup in a hospital. Now everything is interlinked by internet. And this fool knows that I am allergic, rather deadly allergic to a certain medicine. He can get somebody to hack the system in that hospital wherein I have gone for a health checkup or an ordinary treatment and see to that that medicine is displayed. What the nurse does is, or the person who comes to dispense the medicine, looks into the monitor, administers the medicine. I'm over. I'm gone. Initially, the fingers will be pointed against the establishment. The nurse will say that, see, whatever is prescribed by the doctor, I have administered. The hospital will ask the doctor. He says, I never would have administered or rather recommended that medicine because I know that in his records itself, it is written that he is allergic. Nowadays, we have center of reference, these sort of records and not the patient. Interpersonal relationship or between the doctor-patient has gone down like anything. So all this can happen. So what happens is that this is very much possible. See, it is so powerful a tool. I just wanted to demonstrate that to you. So tactfully used, you can commit murder. And you look into the definition of murder in IPC. Physical presence at the place of occurrence, is it mandated or not? Please look up that. I'll give some food for thought for that. To murder somebody, does the law say that both of you should be at the same place at the same time to commit the murder? Okay, now let us move ahead. I just digressed a bit so that I thought you should know this technology is so powerful that anything is possible. Only what is required is good imagination. Now, with the advent of computers in all walks of life, e-governance, the era when the need and necessity of laws to regulate the activities of cyber case arose. Okay, these are all. Now, let us see the preamble of the Act. An act to provide legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data interchange and other means of electronic communication, that is e-commerce, use of alternatives to paper-based methods of communication and storage of information facilitate. 4 acts were amended. Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, Bankers Book Evidence Act, Reserve Bank of India Act. These 4 acts were amended. If you look, an overview of the act will show you that it is an enabling act. It enables the regime of electronic signatures. It's a facilitating act. It facilitates e-governance and e-commerce. It is a regulatory act. It regulates cybercrime and other cyber-related offenses. It has got a fundamental equality approach. It does not differentiate between paper and paperless document. This, friends, is what the primary intention of the Information Technology Act is. But as I stated earlier, it is now known for all the wrong reasons of arrest and things like that. And in spite of even 66A being declared to be unconstitutional, it is still in the statute book, and arrest, etc., are being made by the police and other law enforcement agencies under that section as well, which compelled the Supreme Court recently to say that any such activities, if reported, would also amount to contempt of court. Now, the new act gives definite provisions for how something could be regarding attribution, acknowledgement, dispatch, etc. That is the beauty of the new act. And legal consequences, let us see. I asked a question earlier, like, post, tag, etc. Please understand that in the actual life, if I say or somebody says Shyam is an idiot or a stupid, okay, CB sir calls me that, and in the internet, and somebody puts a like icon, it means that whatever stated above is correct and I subscribe to that. It is as good as you are also making the statement. It is, if you share it, it amounts to a new publication altogether. You cannot take recourse to the fact that it was made by someone else. So whenever you interact in cyberspace, be cautious. The only benchmark which I can offer you is that act in such a manner that in the given circumstances, how you would have reacted, how you would have responded, how you would have acted in actual physical world. Do it in the same manner. Then I would say to that extent you are safe. If you are unsafe in the actual world with such a reaction, then here also you got a problem. Now, just you can just go through that. It gives legal recognition to that section 4 and 5. Then offenses, section 66, 43, etc. Deals with that. You know, that's all there in the text, but still Rest assured that there is a mechanism. And for that matter, earlier digital signature, the word was used. Now it has been put into the schedule and it's substituted by the term electronic signature, thus making the act technology neutral. So any development, further development in the technology will not hurt the statute as such. It can be incorporated in the schedule. Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 are there. This all intricacy is not necessary, but still I just wanted you to go through that. It has got 13 chapters and 90 sections and 2 schedules. I hope all of you can read that. Just go through that. To put it very simply, it provides for all those facilities, all those avenues wherein you can interact with each other as if you are doing in the actual world itself. Whatever determines the legal binding nature of your interactions in the actual world has been carried forward into the virtual world with the use of technology, and which is computationally found to be infeasible to, I don't say it's 100% foolproof, but it is good enough for the legal system. I said the act applies to the whole of India. And some documents are exempted. I want you to know that also. Negotiable instruments other than checks, power of attorney, trust, a will, any contract for the sale of or conveyance of immovable property, or any such class of documents, etc. to be added. That is not there now. But why these are exempted is not because there is any something wrong in the system. It's only because of the infrastructural deficiencies, the difficulty in integrating different government departments and subscribing. For example, will. How a will has to be, it has to be signed by persons in the presence of each other. There is a legal mandate. A Succession Act as well as the Evidence Act has to be looked into. All those things with the available infrastructure, and also it has to be managed by the individual and individual level. Just imagine asking everybody to have all this infrastructure of digital signature, internet connection, all those things may not be possible. That is why that these are exempted for the time being. But I'm sure that once the infrastructure and the awareness grows, all this and everything will be coming under the this thing. 4 and 5 are electronic signatures, and that is the. Now I'll just simplify this entire thing with one example. You need not get yourself confused. What is the last? I'm sure that many of you or all of you would have taken a flight at one point of time or another in your life. What is the last thing which happens before you board? There will be a sentry standing who just looks at your boarding pass. Usually a seal used to be there. Nowadays, even that is not there. The fact that you're holding a what you call boarding pass and standing physically there, he lets you in. Why? He does not frisk you. He does not know what is in your hand baggage. He just lets you in. The fact that you are present there and you are holding a boarding pass proves that a certain procedure, a protocol has been followed, that you have been, all the checks, all the what you call security things have you undergone, and you are fit to board the aircraft. It is just like that. Electronic signature, the encryptive mechanism, and the technology provides for a digital environment wherein these sort of protocols can be presumed to have been undergone. Not there are persons with bombs entering the aircraft. Does that mean that the procedure is not good enough? There are persons who can circumvent that also. Likewise, in this also there is always a possibility of some compromise happening here or there. That does not mean that the entire system has to be scrapped. It has to be found out, and the way it has to, once that procedure and protocol is proved to have been followed, then a legal system need not look any further for accepting it, unless and until it is approved and established that there is a compromise which has to be looked into. And then CIDAC, etc., the cyber slows available, they have got technologies and tools. There is something known as cyber tracing, etc. All those things can be utilized to find out what the culprit or what exactly has gone down. Then just see section 65, etc., 66, hacking computer. These are all provisions with which we need not concern ourselves for the time being. Publishing of obscene information, penalty for misrepresentation. So two provisions, I mean section 66, 67 and also 43 may be looked into for the provisions were in, you may be held liable. This is the current legal scenario. I'll just put another question. You may kindly answer in the chat column. Once again, I'm sorry to inconvenience you one more time. Which is the court on the original side which has got unlimited pecuniary jurisdiction, or which is the most powerful court as far as pecuniary jurisdiction is concerned? I'll confine for the time being to the state of Kerala, and others also can. Those of my friends who are from outside state can also answer, but there are some differences here and there. But as far as Kerala is concerned, how many of you can say the most powerful court from among these courts shown on the screen, which has got unlimited pecuniary jurisdiction, or like what I can say is that if I commit some mischief against Bill Gates, he want to sue me, he want $1 trillion as damages, which court he can approach as far as Kerala is concerned? High Court, okay. High Court. Any other, everybody? High Court. Those who want High Court need not post again. Any other court? We got up to Supreme Court. Why you confine yourself to High Court? See, I asked you a question of original jurisdiction, not of appellate jurisdiction or not of any other jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction, it is, one more answer has come, let me see. Subcourt. Wonderful. Dilip, you are absolutely correct. It is the subcourt. Subcourt can be said to be the, what do you call, court with unlimited pecuniary jurisdiction. See, it is the most powerful court as far as the country is concerned. Why this assumes importance is because the next slide will explain why I put that question to you. See, this is the cyber law administration structure. You got an adjudicating officer, you got a controller, cyber law appellate tribunal, cyber regulations advisory committee, cyber law. So under section 43, etc., if something you are seeking compensation, where do you go? You go to the adjudicating officer. He can adjudicate things up to what amount? There is an amount specified. I believe it's 5 crores. If that amount doesn't make any significance, but what I can say is that if it is your claim is above 5 crores, where do you go? Not to any of these authorities, but to the ordinary civil court, which we in Kerala call as subcourt, and in Bangalore, etc., we call it as city civil courts. Adjudicating officer is usually the IT secretary of the state, and up to 5 crores. Then from the decision of the adjudicating officer, you can go to a cyber appellate tribunal for appellate jurisdiction. But if on the original side, if your claim is above 5 crores, it is a subcourt or the city civil court. Section 43, unauthorized access. Unlimited damages can be claimed. Why? Because all of you would have seen Spider-Man, right? The movie Spider-Man. There is a tag in that. With great powers come greater responsibilities or something like that. Likewise, the damage that can be caused, if I have got a problem with Ramshad who is sitting there, and if I want to defame him or do something, the best I can do is that go around the city with a mic or something, or I can publish in the local newspaper. But then again, the circulation is limited. But if I put a post in the internet, it will be seen by the entire world. So the damage and the consequences and the relief that should be granted should be correspondingly high. That is where this was an entirely different culture altogether that has been brought into effect by the Information Technology Act, because we basically Indians were attuned to fines of 100 rupees, 50 rupees, etc., which we never cared about. Whether it's a traffic violation, etc. No, that has all been now amended. I'm talking about when this act came into force in 2000. We never heard of this sort of denominations as fine or penalty. Now let us see what is 43 looking into. If you can just go along with that slide, you will see. If any person without permission of the owner or in charge of a computer does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, any of those things, and if any loss, injury or hardship is caused to the owner or the person in charge of the computer or to the establishment, they can very well sue you and get damages. Now, some things you'll have to get attuned to is, one is CERT. CERT is what? Computer Emergency Response Team of India, CERTIN. It is the nodal agency that has been created. And now we have Cert K also, Kerala. If you want to take down a post or a objectionable thing in the internet, how can it be done? Am I audible? Yes. How can it be done? Earlier, there was a rule and by which you could have directly approached the CERT-in, that is Computer Emergency Response. After the amendment, the powers and responsibility of CERT-in has been clearly spelled out in the statute. So now direct access, etc., other than the conditions like national integrity, sovereignty, etc., I'm talking about individual grievances. Now you'll have to move the civil court to get an injunction and an order, and with that order, you'll have to approach the authorities to get it off. Recently, we had a case of Ramdev. I shall come to in the end of my slides. Appellate tribunal I have already mentioned. And for those things which are covered and governed by this act, civil court does not have jurisdiction. But there is always an appeal to the High Court under Section 62. These are the amendments with which we are not concerned today. And regarding intermediary also, we have rulings now which says that if they take best practices and precautionary measures, they can escape from the liability. Otherwise, they will also be liable. And every platform is now required to have a mechanism by which these things can be pulled down or retained, or just by somebody deleting it, it will not escape. Now, we'll just come to the concept of cybercrime. The cybercrime, and just a bird's eye view of what it is. A crime in which a computer is the object of the crime or used as a tool to commit an offense. This in short is the definition. We'll just see what it is all around. Now, just because internet has come, do you think that crimes have increased, or is it? No, crime is, what people need to remember is that crime is just a reflection of the society that we live in. Just like a knife or a car. You can cause an accident, kill somebody. Does that mean car is bad? With a knife, you can do something. You can save a life if you're a doctor with a scalpel. Or you can commit a murder if a murderer with a knife. Nothing wrong with that tool. Just like both of those things, it needs to be treated with respect because of the dangers that can be associated with it. Then social media, of course, defamation, false, etc. If at all there are any questions regarding it, we'll address that. But let us see that everything available in the actual world can be done. All mischiefs can be done in the virtual world. And all those things are held liable and responsible, not just under the Information Technology Act. You'll have to look into two provisions which says that this, just because you have been, Section 75, I believe. If we can just have a look at Section 75 of the Act, which says that, 77, I'm sorry. No compensation awarded, penalty imposed, or confiscation made under this Act shall prevent the award of compensation or imposition of any other penalty or punishment under any other law for the time being in force. So not just under IT Act, but if it comes under the definition of any of the other provisions like Indian Penal Code, Indecent Representation of Women Act, POXCO, whatever it is, it will be. Now, to regulate internet behavior, we got cyber malicious harm, cyber stalking, etc. I'll just touch upon a couple of them. You'll have to know what is cyberbullying. Harassment or stalking, vilification, defamation, prejudice-based bullying, ostracizing or peer pressure, peer rejection, exclusion, identity theft, unauthorized access and impersonation. All these things. Somebody was saying about Blue Whale, etc. Blue Whale is something you voluntarily enter. There is nobody coming behind you. You yourself enter and you yourself, it's just like committing suicide. Nobody is doing or asking you to do, and suicide, there is no abetment in that. The only thing is that that game creates a sort of mental situation wherein to prove yourself or you are not good enough if you don't go by it. That's some sort of social engineering by which drastic results are made. Let us see what are the 3 C's of digital citizenship. I would say it's known as digital citizenship. One is appropriate contact. There is no cup waiting or no award to be given to you because of the number of followers or number of friends you have in your list. You will have to check, and if you find that certain friends in your friend list usually what happens is that you just click anybody who has got a common friend. That is how they enter into the system, these sort of miscreants. They just somehow enter into something and then later they come to and create problems for you. Then appropriate content. Whatever you do, I'll give you a benchmark. Never post anything which you don't want to see in the newspaper the next day. Appropriate content. So these 3 has to be kept in mind. We'll rush through the next slides because we started around 10 minutes late. So I like to finish my presentation within the next 10 minutes. So what I'll do is that I'll rush through the next couple of slides so that it will be very easy. Let us see the best practices. That we did not take time on it, but there are certain best practices to be done because there is something known as zoning out. Because once you start using the internet, or when you are in the confines or the comfort of your room or your bedroom, usually when you are exposed to this cyber world, your guards will be down. And there is always a possibility that you will act in a manner which you otherwise would not have acted in the actual world. You will make some comments or even put some photos or share some photos only intending for X, but that will be seen by the entire world. So don't jump into unwarranted conclusions about relationship with friends who are really nothing more than cyber acquaintances. The photo, the description given may not be correct. This is what I was alluding to. Don't post anything on Facebook that you wouldn't care to see printed on the front page of the newspaper. Just keep that in mind. Stay grounded because there is every possibility of you getting zoned out. A stitch in time saves time. So ethical rules for computer users, which I may be able to coin out, would be: do not use computers to harm other users. Do unto others what you don't like, what you would like others to do unto you. Do not use computers to steal others' information. Do not access files. Just see, do you require a law for this? You go to a friend's house or you go to your tarwad. You usually remove your footwears. I don't know. Nowadays it has become a fashion to walk even inside the bedroom also with the shoes on. I don't care about that. I don't want to be judgmental. But at least the sizable majority of us do remove is there any law which asks you to do that? You see a elder, forget about the bus and public transport. Nowadays it does not happen. But at least in the house, you make an attempt to stand up and show some respect. Or if you are wearing a lungi or a mundu or something, you try to put it down. There is no law. It only by practice. But what happens is that in the cyber world, there is no behavioral protocol yet evolved because of the sudden imposition of this new technology and the whole new world. That's the issue. So I would put it in this manner. If you have a problem, face it. Don't Facebook it. There is no issue. How many of you can just walk around the street and say just, hi, did you have coffee? I had biscuit and something in the morning. I had a loose motion, etc. How many of you would say in the actual world? But in the virtual world, you post everything. You post almost anything. The new dress, thankfully, it is not underwear or something like that. Even that you will post. See, we are not at all careful while dealing in that. Whereas if you just put a benchmark that whatever I do in the actual world alone, I will do in the virtual world. In the actual world, if you do something funny and you're ready to face the consequences, go ahead, indulge. But later on, don't cry saying that, and for that matter, actual world, it can be manipulated. Memory is short, imperfect, and people may forget. But in the virtual world, it's a sterile environment. It can never, even if you delete it, it will remain there. With the right tools, cyber sleuths like CIDAC and other agencies can definitely go and get it back, retrieve. So don't be under the impression that I can post anything and then just delete it. Nothing. Now the new protocol also says that all these intermediaries should also see to that there's a protocol in place that all materials are stored for a particular period of time for the law enforcement agencies if at all they call that it has to be produced. So deleting is of no consequence. Then regarding kids, I don't think this demography of today's audience would like to have it, but get them, indoctrinate, educate them from the early days itself. this is something good, this is something great, and this has to be used in such and such manner to derive the maximum potential or benefits. If you misuse it, or if you do, you can get their psychological development can also be affected. So I would put the SMART rules as this. Think before giving out personal information. Meeting someone you have met online is potentially harmful. Accepting emails or opening files from people you don't know can be dangerous. Think about the credibility of the information you read. Nowadays, COVID-19 or the corona, you have got lot of cures available. I don't know, except for grinding and eating your iPhone or phones, everything else has been now tried, and all will be backed by some doctor or somebody will be stated. You don't cross check it. So dissemination of misinformation, which is the curse of the present generation or the present era, has to be curbed by being responsible persons. And tell your spouse to immediately, that is, if at all you are married and you want that. And this is not just a phone. This is the key to everything you are. So you take care of this. It is just like throwing your wallet around or the keys of the house around. How do you expect it to be safe? Same manner. And these are the precautions that could be taken against harassment. You just can go through that. I need not reproduce that. It is just like ragging. See, usually in nowadays it has gone down thanks to the intervention of the different stakeholders, including the district legal service authorities and others, wherein they take, and the police force also, who take classes. I won't drag, I won't be ragged. Take a promise. One. Number two, I will report at the first instance if of something like that comes to my, I won't let it aggravate. This is the same thing in cyberspace also. Just see it as some sort of ragging. The first instance, if you report, otherwise they get emboldened, and slowly it will go from bad to worse. And be careful about usage-free Wi-Fi, switching off Wi-Fi when not. These are the precautions you may take, so that these things I could get from SIDAC because they shared it with me, because these are the places where your information and things that you want to stay safe get compromised. But I would say that whether you are the frog or the stork, in the given scenario, never ever give up, because you'll have to keep on trying, you'll have to keep on educating yourself, you'll have to keep on equipping yourself. There is no way say, oh, all done and said, I have done all precautions. No, that is why we have all these gadgets and things for security things that has to be taken. Like I said earlier, sterile environment, it remains there, it will never go. So anywhere, so I'd say that a victim of cybercrime needs to immediately report the matter to his local police station and to the nearest cybercrime cell. Depending on the nature of the crime, there may be civil and criminal remedies. In civil remedies, injunction and restraint orders may be sought together with damages, delivery up of infringing matter and or accounts for profit. In criminal remedies, the cybercrime will be registered by police if the offense is cognizable, and if the same is non-cognizable, a complaint should be filed with Metropolitan Magistrate. For certain offenses, both civil and criminal remedies may be available to the victim. And as punishment, you got for compensation and damages, IT secretary, or you can go to a civil court. Defamation, regular law, and intellectual property violation, there is a regime behind it to enforce that. Punishments are severe, not just under the Information Technology Act. The regular law also applies. And this is the, what you call the national initiative. This, if you click, you will be directly directed to a website where you can lodge a complaint. It will be, there are all the parameters given therein. If you subscribe, immediately there will be a response. So to put it very slowly, or put it in one slide, how to deal with some sort of cyber attack, assault, or defamation, or vandalism. Register the case with local police station. Earlier, it ought to you had to go all the way and find out what the cyber cell is. Now a circular has come which says that it is for that local police station to register the FIR and forward it to the cyber cell if the assistance of cyber cell is required. All police stations have 2 policemen from cyber cell. They shall do the proper evidence collection. Cyber police station take cases from local police station using the police application IAPPS. The police case shall be forwarded to cyber cell. This is a now very prompt. Cyber cells do the analysis and report back to the concerned police station. In case a forensic examination is needed, it will be sent to the laboratories. And all the platforms have their own security mechanism. If you have an objectionable post or something you feel it is not good, you can immediately report to Facebook and other portals, wherein they have their own mechanism of dealing with that. If they don't do that, they are also liable equally, if not more than the perpetrator. So to conclude, I would say that privacy on the web, all media is permanent. Please understand. And even if you destroy your computer altogether, whatever you have posted in internet will be there, in cyberspace will be there. All information is available. With the right tools, the cyber sleuths can get it. If you don't want people to know about it, don't do it, and especially don't do it online. Then choose your friends properly. Protect your information. Don't give it out. If you any system is as strong as the weakest link. You may have the best walls made of cast iron or impregnable material, but if you have a window or a ventilator which is not good enough, what is the fun in having the other things? Just like that. And I'll give you one example, which while assisting the cyber cell in one of the cases, what happened is that a very interesting thing came out. Somebody posted that 1 week going to Goa. So they were posting, say, Adichupoli Macha, etc., coming in, and he just wanted to show off that, see, I can take a vacation with family to Goa, and we are staying in the 5-star hotel. I don't know what the name is, seafront, swimming photos, everything. These persons who are watching, this is not a cyber predators or persons who are very talented. They look for this sort of information. The neighbor saw a vehicle coming and parking before that house, and some persons getting out casually. They went inside, they stayed for 1 week. They thought they were moving house. So while the other person was posting his pictures there, these persons who were perpetrating the complete theft of the house were fully aware of the fact that these persons will never come back for 2 weeks. See, the kind of information you shared without even knowing. And finally, they put a post also. Thank you, Macha. You had a blast. We too had a blast. And when they came, it was nice to see an empty house. Ask permission to post photos. Please understand that privacy of all individuals are important, not only of yours. So even if you have a binging session, or if you have a fun evening, you may take photos. Nobody would care. But just imagine in the actual world, you standing in bus station and railway station giving out these copies of photos. Would anybody like that? It is just like that you posting it in the internet. Any Tom, Dick and Harry can see it. Do you want that to happen? Your fun moments will be taken whenever a camera comes up. It is just like going to a sadhya in a marriage. Whenever the video comes, you will freeze like that. You don't want anybody to see you swallowing or gulping down all those things, just like that. So you can't be yourself if these sort of things are not properly taken care of. Never react, never respond in a knee-jerk passion, or if you try reacting and do something, it will only matter, may go from bad to worse. Instead, you take the proper route, you take proper guidance from the concerned parties, you report it to the concerned authorities, or you may end up doing a worse or something even more bad crime, because while reacting, you may do something silly. And of course, share the information with everybody. If there is a site you've seen, or if there is usually what happened, a doctor in my neighborhood lost around 8 lakhs following up. Somebody said that my father or grandfather, who's a multi-millionaire, has died. It is not as Nigerian frauds. He would like to share all the money with Indian street urchins, and we found you to be a very wonderful gentleman. Please, can we transfer the amount to you? But we can give only 1% as commission. 1%, if you calculate, will run to crores. So, oh my God. And for the processing of which, please send $10. That is a test dose. If you fall for it, you're done. Then they know how to manipulate. They'll give you a phone number, and when you call that number, you will have a perfect British accent. Some lady telling you how sweet of you to associate with us. It is wonderful. Now we got a problem with your consulate. They are asking for $200, and that if we transfer, they'll think that we are doing some hanky panky. You will have to send it. We'll pay it, and then we'll return that money. Another $200 gone. Slowly, taking advantage of your avaricious and greedy intent, they'll siphon out the entire money from you. This is a classic case of social engineering which can be implemented because they are gullible. I hope my today's presentation wasn't something like this. Something would have gone home. And this, please understand, was intended for my dear student community. I did not take you to any of the provisions or intricacies or the decisions of the different courts on the nuances and things of Information Technology Act. I just wanted to share some thoughts and make you aware and interested in the subject so that more persons will learn, understand, and equip themselves. And recently, there was a decision by the Delhi High Court, global takedown of defamatory contents by online platform. That was Swami Ramdev and another versus Facebook Incorporated. Justice Pratibha Singh has passed an order to remove all defamatory content posted online against Yoga Guru Baba Ramdev based on a book titled Godman to Tycoon, The Untold Story of Baba Ramdev, without any territorial limit. Please see. Mentioning that if the content is uploaded or if it is located in India on a computer resource, then the courts in India should have international jurisdiction. That cause effect, impact theory, and taking advantage of a specific provision in the Information Technology Act. It is the Google has taken up before the division bench. Let us see what happens. But for the time being, this is a decision worth reading. Those who would like to see it. Ultimately, I would conclude by saying that the best filter is not any antivirus tool. It is in between your own ears, your own brain, your own discerning power, your ability to know between wheat and chaff. If you utilize it properly, I'm sure that many of the pitfalls which await a cyber entrant can easily be avoided. One aspect, but it all depends upon you. Kuttiyano, pattiyano validhu, you will have to decide. You should be able to prioritize your needs. You should be, whether you want to glamorize yourself by indulging and taking all the risks, which you would never have taken in the actual world. Is it that you want? It's for each and every one of us. That is what I said, Article 51 AJ, or the power of one. Each one of us got a responsibility to act sensibly, and to avoid dissemination of misinformation. Before you forward something which you have received, there is no award kept for first person who reaches or forwards a mail. Cross-check it. There are different ways of cross-checking whether the information given to that too during this pandemic times. Please don't be part of this panic or what you call fear mongering. And it is not that we don't know the law. We know the person in front should have a helmet. And I hope this person has properly implemented the law of the country. Or rather, it is just like saying that I like to have a t-shirt like this so that the next policeman who sees me through that tinted glass or semi-tinted glass will feel that I too am wearing a seat belt. Without understanding the philosophy behind it, why should there be a helmet? Why should there be a seat belt? It is not for avoiding payment of 100 rupees or 200 rupees to the next policeman who stops you. It has got a purpose, and it is the law of the land made by the legislators, and this legislature is nothing but your and my representative sitting there and legislating. If you got a problem with the legal system, if you got a problem with the law of the land, it is time you had a relook in the way in which you select your representative to these august bodies where law is being made, not otherwise whining and crying sitting together. To conclude, for a country like India, where we are trying to enhance the positive use of internet and working towards reducing the digital divide, it need be ensured that new users do not get scared away because of publicity of computer-related offenses. That is why in the Act, there is no terminology as cybercrime. If you scan this Act throughout, nowhere is it written the word cybercrime. Because it is not a punitive statute, it is an enabling statute. It wants to see to that the digital divide is reduced. Earlier it was haves and have-nots, now it is digitally aware and unaware. Friends, there are three kinds of people. I'm addressing the student community. Those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. I hope you will not be in the third category. Let us give the country a helping hand and see to that our acts are positive and proactive. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'm sure that I overshot my time by around 10 or 15 minutes. I think I'll be excused for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, each one of you. I'll just, Sibi sir, you are unmuted. Okay.
Sir, I request if any student have any doubt, you can maybe for 5 minutes If you have any doubt,
Definitely.
you can.
I would request that the hand icon may be shown that I can unmute each one of you. Pranav has, of course, Pranav, please unmute yourself and put your question. Pranav N. Yes, please, Pranav.
Sir, there is a lack in the audio. That while I have made the
Okay, Pranav. Do you have any clarification, or if you have any comments, suggestions? I'm here to learn also, not just to impose my wisdom on you. I want to have some takeaways from you also. Thank you, Pranav. I think Anantu Surendran. Yes, Anantu.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, morning, sir.
Fine and safe.
Yes, please.
So I was in a query about a situation where the reach of the fact that we post in the internet goes around now so wide.
Yes.
So by looking in a professional manner, if I am in a company or in an institution, how can I judge the spread of the information I give? So how safe it is to use an internet now?
I would say that there is absolutely no issues with safety if you subscribe to the protocols and procedures, and if you have that security system in place. It is just like saying that if I am careless in my actual life, in the actual world, how exposed I will be to crimes and things like that. The same manner, if you take the reasonable care, caution and attention which you would have taken in the actual world, I'm sure and definite that there are protocols and procedures in place which can be, I would say that safety measures taken. You're absolutely free, and I would say it's a wonderful medium that could be exploited to the maximum to augment the business or context of your company.
Sir, one query too, sir. Is there any law that links Company Act and a cyber law?
Any law which links?
Yeah.
I would say Section 77, which I read, and also other provisions which says that this is in addition to,
okay, sir,
to the existing law. So whatever is there in the company law, unless and until it is in conflict with this one. That is for 81, I believe. One second, I'll also read out 81 if my memory serves me right. Yes, Section 81. The provisions of this act shall have effect notwithstanding anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law for the time being in force. If it is inconsistent, then this will prevail. If it is not inconsistent, if it is addition to and not in derogation to this one, I believe that there is, of course, that can also be invoked. And company law, as far as company affairs and corporate affairs are concerned, are operating in an entirely different realm. It's a special statute for a special thing. So as far as company and company affairs are concerned, I believe, except for when this Information Technology Act has to be invoked, you might have an exclusion if there is a contradiction.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you for the session.
Thank you. That was Anandu. Now we have Ramshad. Okay, Ramshad, please.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Morning.
It was a wonderful session, sir. And
thank you, Ramshad.
My one query is the one before 2 years, I think, one person who living in Kerala, but he is now is in Saudi Arabia, and he posted one comment on Facebook below because of that comment of Facebook, somebody completed in the police station.
One second, I did not get you. The earlier portion was not clear. Can you just repeat that? What happened?
One person is working in Saudi Arabia, but
yes,
he is a citizen of India.
Yes.
But after complaining the Facebook, then we take the post and everything from the Facebook.
Yes.
We give to the police station.
Yes.
Then they went to transferred that complaint to the cyber cell, to the district committee.
Okay.
That time the police transferred this information to the Facebook owners. Then there's all the time they replied like this only. There is something between the agreement between these two countries, so that we can't reveal the person information. Then reply on only that reply only. what will be the next step for that against that person?
I'm sure now, recently, Oman has opened up. You're talking about Middle East, right?
Yeah, Middle East, Saudi Arabia.
Reciprocity or agreements are being entered into with different countries. But even otherwise, if at all we can have the culprit in any of those places wherein we are able to, or we have an agreement or an arrangement in any other country, if at all he comes, if he has committed an offense which is covered and governed under the Information Technology Act, because it is transnational. This act, unlike other acts, is not confined to the country. Even you can see the beginning itself, section 2 itself, it's wonderfully written. I'm sure that you would have gone through that. Anywhere, two provisions are there which says that it has got no boundaries as such. So what happens is that if you are able to, but the practical effect, I fully agree with you, because maybe there is a law in place, but for implementing it, there should be an infrastructure and there should be agreement with countries. That of course is a problem. But otherwise, this person, if at all, is able to be found or apprehended in a place over which we have some sort of arrangement of extradition and reciprocity, we can definitely take action. Or if at all he comes to our country at any point of time, we can.
That wrong is damage this person, very highly damage that person.
I
Because
understand.
of that.
Let us even imagine that he has committed murder. Why you want to confine to something less? Even then, the problem is, unless and until, see, any law can be enforced only if you are able to implement it. Implementation is only possible in such places and countries wherein our laws are respected or our treaties are there. That is one issue. That's a practical difficulty. This act or implementation of Information Technology Act and cyber-related offenses are concerned.
I heard so many cases like this only. There's some treaty between these two countries, so that we can't reveal the details of the accused person.
That is what we call as conflict of laws, or it is known as public international law, in which we have, that is a subject in itself, which deals with this special area. That of course is there.
We know the person he's living, his hometown is in Kerala or in India only, but
just take the example, forget cyber everything. Can you get Dawood Ibrahim? He is in the lookout notice anywhere, anytime, but he is in a country which does not recognize or respect our needs or desires or law. Same is the issue. Don't put cyber in between. Think in terms of actual things. Then you can find an answer for what my endeavor today was, to demystify the cyber laws. What I was trying to equate is that it is nothing but the actual laws in a different platform. The platform alone is different. Likewise, the same difficulties you face with these characters who could completely destroy cities, plan bombs, and coolly walk out. Same issue.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this you told me that this is enabling law.
Yes.
Or means this is a procedure law, substantive law?
No. Nothing. I'd say it has got certain procedural aspect. It is a substantive law, no doubt.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Shyam sir.
Yeah.
I think can I say a few words, and after that we can wind it up.
Definitely. I mean, only one person has shown the hand icon. That is Anupiam Pillai. I mean, if he's available, he can definitely put the question.
Sir, I'm telling all of you, all those who attended, I'm very much honored, because more than what we expected. I'm thankful to our Prime Minister 4 students and Prime Minister 6 students. So all of them stayed back till the completion. And also, I'm very thankful to all the respected advocates and all the invited guests, those who are part of it. So, on behalf of Mangalam, Shyam sir, I'm fortunate that you are close to me for the last several years, from SB College days onwards. So thankful, very thankful, and we will keep in touch. Once again, I'm thankful to the esteemed advocates and other invited guests, and thankful to the T3 and T4 students. So to wind it up, I want 2 students to say a few word of thanks. Just 2. And I request,
I can unmute them. I can mention the name.
Megha Shibla.
Megha, 1 second. Or I'll do one thing. I'll unmute all so that one second.
Okay.
Just give me a second.
Can you hear me?
Just give me a second.
Good afternoon, sir.
Megha, you will have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Okay, sir. Myself, Megha. And sir, I would like to really thank you, sir, for your really informative session regarding the topic cyber law. It was really informative, sir. I think we are all inspired by your great words, sir. And we get to know more about the cyber law, orders, authorities, and everything, sir. So really thank you, sir, for your valuable time. And also, I'd like to thank CB sir also for organizing such an informative session for us, sir.
Thank you, Megha, for your kind words. I'm deeply indebted to you all for your patience and all those guests who were present today. I see
Shani?
also. Thank you very much for being present for this one. Yeah, please. Anyone else?
Shani, can you say a few words?
Yes, sir, sure. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I'm Shani, a final year MBA student. First of all, I want to say a big thanks to you, sir. It was such an interesting class, and we got more knowledge and information about cyber laws, cyber crimes, and the new act. As the technology is developing day by day, and I think as an MBA student, it's mandatory to know about cyber laws, crimes, and all. And once again, on behalf of Mangalam College, I'd like to thank Shyam sir for the session and all other invited guests for their valuable time. And thank you so much, CB sir, for arranging this session. And we expect more informative session like this. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shani, for your kind words. And I really appreciate it because I am very closely associated with your establishment, especially through CB James sir, because I used to be there and for your best manager competitions for the stress interview. It was a wonderful experience, a nice campus. My request to all of you is that make the best out of the campus and the faculties. You got a wonderful place. While you are there, excel in your studies and get yourself exposed to new thoughts and ideas. And when you come out, let us see a full-fledged social engineer, a good, well-defined Indian citizen.
Sam sir, thanks a lot. As a parting sentence, I'm thankful to you, sir. For you took the pain to stay there for this much time. You took the pain to prepare, and thanks a lot, sir. And thankful to first year and second year MP students as well as we had the invited guests also. So we hope to have this kind of sessions in future too, sir.
Definitely, I would definitely, and Littles is now, thanks to you, we are inspired to step into this student movement in the sense like we are going to conduct more classes and with coordinating with you as well as other institutions, we look forward to have more classes so that it is a threshold wherein persons and students can be initiated to this wonderful world of legal empowerment through interaction.
Sir, I have a plan to give e-certificate if possible. I will think of it and maybe
definitely.
I will send you the details, sir. E-certificate to all the participants. So I'm writing it, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. From Mangalam College. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody. All my student friends, guests, and senior advocates, Dilip sir, all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you.